everybody thinks it's about quieting your thoughts. What the real purpose of meditation is to learn how to step out of your thoughts and watch them kind of flow through the consciousness of your mind.
Welcome to the Spirits Beside Us podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lippincott. I'm an ex-Wall Street analyst turned international medium, spiritual teacher, and best-selling author. Each week we'll dive into the fascinating and uplifting arena of the non-physical world to help you deepen your understanding and spiritual connection to the unseen realm. We'll also share a behind-the-scenes look with others who've done the same and speak with experts in the field about their experiences. Pull up a seat and let's dive into these perspective-changing conversations. Welcome to another episode of Spirits Beside Us. I'm so glad to have you with us today. Today we'll be touching on some topics that I think have been so requested and so often asked about. Everything from meditation to how do I ground myself? How do I find a space where I can actually seek greater happiness, let alone be happy? How do I even begin? And today's guest, Bob Martin, is really an expert in all of that, having come from a world that was far from some of the topics that we're going to talk today. He's gone from a place of being extremely material to a place of non-materiality. Really sort of, taking that journey. We can get into that definitely, because he teaches meditation. He teaches how to achieve greater happiness, and also has understood and is able to teach Taoism, which really helps kind of get you to that center area. He's actually a professor of wellness and mindfulness for Elon University. And he's got a private practice where he's teaching mindfulness and happiness as well. So he's quite an expert at this. So with that, Bob, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, great. One of the things that absolutely fascinates me, and I'm sure may fascinate a lot of other people, is this place where you are now, the ability to understand meditation, understand centeredness, and meditation is a far cry from where you started, which makes me immediately think this is perhaps a directionally similar journey from a lot of people. They're in the material world, but they're trying to get to a more spiritual world. You had a similar kind of journey where you went from a not so spiritual world to a very spiritual world. So tell us a little bit about your journey. It sounds you've got a very unique journey.
Yeah. It was, in the words of the Grateful Dead, it was a wild and crazy road. Oh, what a long, strange trip it's been, they said. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with immigrant parents. My dad was Hungarian royalty, and the Bolsheviks wiped out his whole ancestry. My mom was Roma Gypsy, and everybody wiped them out, including the Nazis. My dad was born in 1898, just to give a time frame to think about. And he fled Hungary when the Bolsheviks invaded in the early part of the last century. I tell you that because I want you to know that I didn't grow up in any kind of a religious family. My folks came to the conclusion that if there was a God at all, it wasn't one that was worth worshiping. And it wasn't that they were anti-religious. It just wasn't a conversation that we had. After my father died, I found out some really strange things about his belief system that surprised me. Not strange, but really quite normal. But anyway, he found his way to the American dream through popcorn and cotton candy. Okay, he took the little bit of money that they had saved during the Depression and bought himself a popcorn machine and a cotton candy machine. And I grew up in amusement parks and carnivals. So I never expected to be a lawyer. I guess at one point my greatest ambition was to sell enough hot dogs in the summer to not have to work in the winter. But I had a friend who kept pushing me. He said, "You should be a lawyer. You need to be a lawyer. You should be a lawyer." This guy actually, you talk about, sometimes you talk about things that are coincidental.
Mm.
and then you talk about things that are synchronistic,
Yeah.
and that's always kind of an issue. Is there some force of glue in the universe that brings things together at exactly the right moment to make other things happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's above my pay grade, but my experience have told me that there certainly have been enough strange coincidences for me to believe that there's something afoot,
Something out there. Yeah.
something out there. And anyway, he went off and he got himself a job just to make enough money for me to buy a ticket to the law school aptitude test. And he stayed with me all through my training until I got sworn in. And he had been a heroin addict, and 2 days after I got sworn in, he met some chick and they decided to shoot up, and he didn't realize that his tolerance had lowered, and he overdosed and died.
Oh, wow.
And so I've always thought that being a lawyer was some special calling for me. So I started out in the DA's office. Janet Reno was my boss in
Oh,
Miami
yeah.
during the cocaine cowboy days, and those were very crazy days. If you've seen the movie Scarface, that really captures the vibe of the times. We hit some of the higher ranking cartel and Italian family folks we never got them on a criminal charge, but we got them on civil charges, and we hit them for like 70 million bucks. And then I went out in private practice, and they came to me, walked right in my office 2 weeks after I hung my shingle out, scared the bejesus out of me.
We got an offer you can't refuse.
That's right, but it was a good offer.
Oh.
They said, you beat our lawyers, and our lawyers are good, and you beat them, so we want to start to send you clients.
Ooh.
So I'm working with these guys now for the next few years, and it was the cocaine cowboy days.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it by saying that my behaviors became somewhat excessive, and my personal life was falling apart. So what do? You reach out for help, like so many of us. In this respect, my story is so common. You're bottoming out somewhere, and you reach out for help. But then, by circumstance, it turns out that my therapist was a devotee, number one student, and English language editor for Watching Ni, a 72nd generation Taoist grandmaster from the Shaolin Temple.
Oh, wow.
And he came to Miami, and I met this guy. And like I say, I didn't grow up with a religious background, but the moment I met him, I knew that he had what I needed. And between him and George, his devotee, we had a little Taoist group, and I studied under Master Ni and George for 6 years, and that was absolutely transformational. I mean, I just learned an entire different way of looking at life. And just about the same time when all of that teaching was kind of grabbing and taking hold, my Italian client, Johnny's son, got arrested. And we had a good arrangement up until then. Nothing illegal, nothing unethical, because, it's in his advantage to have a lawyer that is trusted and respected by the courts.
Right.
And he agreed, and everything was good. But at that point, it was, you will win this case, whatever you have to do.
Oh, God.
And I said, I won't do that, but what I will do is move to North Carolina. And he said, sometimes a man just has to move on, and we shook hands and parted friends, and I never heard from them again. But I got to North Carolina, and I was given this most wonderful gift of having a whole blank canvas to rewrite my life on.
Wow.
So with the teachings of Master Ni and with this great opportunity to redefine my life, I went back to work, starting all over again as a DA in this small little community where I went from trying homicides in Miami to trying killing deers with no antlers in North Carolina.
Oh, the innocent deer.
No, the poor deer. But it's a funny story, because I asked the wildlife guy if the deer. He said that's when I found the dead doe deer, and I asked him, and did that deer have no antlers? And the whole courtroom cracked up, because I didn't know that does didn't have antlers.
Oh, you do now.
But I do now, right?
Wow.
But Well, we can talk about this a little more if you care to, but there came a time working with Master Ni, and when I got to North Carolina, there's not a lot of Taoists here.
No, I wouldn't think so. I can't
Yeah,
see North Carolina being the epicenter of
of Taoism.
Tao or Taoism or
Yeah.
anything of the sort.
And for your listeners who haven't heard about Taoism or don't know, it's basically just a sister of Buddhism.
Yeah,
Like,
let's talk about Taoism.
okay, all
What
right.
makes it different? I've heard it's also fundamentally rather simpler, or it enables the understanding to simplify things in some way. Maybe you can
Oh yeah,
understand that.
absolutely,
So how does that work?
absolutely. Well, let's talk about the symbol of Taoism.
Okay.
That's
Oh, it's like the yin and yang
the
symbol.
yin
Yeah.
yang. Well, this yin and yang symbol always looks the same. There's the white part is yang, the dark part is yin, and you notice that in yin there is this white dot.
All right.
So that dot is actually the seed of yang.
So there's part of yang in yin and part of
There's
yin
part
in
of yang
yang.
in yin, and that seed blossoms and grows, and it takes over yin. So yin turns to yang and yang turns to yin. And so the symbol really is a metaphor for the cycling of life. Day turns to night, night turns to day, winter turns to summer. And what we notice in human behavior is that good times always turn to bad times and bad times always turn to good times. Difficult times turn to propitious times. There
Cycle
are
of
times
life.
to advance, times to retreat. And so all of Taoism is about going with the flow. But in order to do that, you have to understand the flow.
Oh.
Like if you're going with the flow down a nice little river and, just letting your, inner tube float nicely, well, you don't have to pay too much attention. But if you get into white water,
Yeah,
you have to act differently.
you're right.
And if you're coming to a waterfall, you have to act differently. And
Particularly.
in a lightning storm, you act one way. In a pleasant drizzle, you act another way.
Yeah.
And so all of life's interchanges with people and the energy interface that you have with other people also works like that. I mean, there are times that people are willing to listen to you and everybody's willing to jump on your team. And there are times when nobody wants to have anything to do with you.
Interesting.
So it's about finding that energy and then aligning with it to make it effective and efficient. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that what's so interesting is the yin and the yang, the perfect balance of the symbol of Taoism seems to also kind of represent that the idea that in order to know one thing, you have to know its opposite.
Absolutely.
And that is also the cycle as well. It's like
Yeah.
there's always two sides to every coin.
Mm-hmm. Tall defines short.
Right.
Front defines back.
You can't have one without the other.
You can't have one without the other, but each define each other.
Right.
And they coexist, and they have to. But they also have different qualities. Best example I could give is, let's say that you're way out in the ocean. You're not in a riptide, but you're way out and you want to swim into shore. So there's probably three ways that you can approach the problem. One, you can panic and drown. Not the best way. Not effective nor efficient. The other is you can be task oriented. I have to get to shore. I'm going to swim to shore, and you just swim with everything you got to get to shore. Now, you'll probably get to shore, but you'll be exhausted. You won't have a lot of energy for anything else. The other way that you can go would be the Taoist way, is where you take a look at the tide and you notice sometimes it goes in toward shore and sometimes it goes away from shore. So you say, well, if I can align myself with it, when it's going to shore, I'm going to use as much energy as I can muster. I'm going to swim like heck. But when it's going against me, well, I don't want to be swept out to sea. So I'll use just enough energy to hold my position and wait patiently until it changes and it's going with me again. Then I'm going to swim like heck. Then I'm going to hold and save my energy. Then I'm going to swim like heck and save my energy. And that way I'll get into shore and I'll be refreshed and energetic. I will have exerted the least amount of energy and yet acquired the desired result. And that is the main goal of Taoism. To interfere with the natural flow of things the least, but have the correct impact.
Interesting. So know where the flow is going and find where the flow is, and then work with that flow to make sure
Work
that
with it.
you're working as efficiently as possible, as
Yeah,
opposed to constantly butting up against the flow that's actually not going in the direction you want and not helping you in any way.
right. It's like if nobody wants to listen to you, then stop speaking.
Stop hitting your head against stop hitting
Right?
your head against the wall.
Yeah, but our natural tendency is to grab the person, shake them, listen to me. I got a great idea. You got to listen to me. Well, they're not ready. But
Right.
Taoism also says that the wise person would take use of the time that they're waiting for the person to come and say, "What was that you wanted to tell me?" Because they will. But to make use of the time that you're waiting to refine your presentation.
Interesting.
So you can even make use of the time when you're holding back. It's not wasted time. I can refine it. I can do internal work. I can make things a little bit better so that when the person turns around and says, "Oh, hey, Bob, what was that you wanted to tell me?" You're really ready and snappy.
Interesting.
Again, you're using time and effort effectively and efficiently.
Now, how does that affect a person's desire to achieve greater happiness? Is that the same concept where you're trying to work with some flow that you're experiencing in your life or your surroundings that enable you to go, quote unquote, go with the flow or achieve that happiness? Because there's that saying, just go with the flow, but perhaps the flow is not what you want.
Well, yeah, I think there has to be an acceptance and an understanding that the flow is what the flow is. The problem is not ever the flow. The problem is you're aligning with it. Somebody asked me a good question right on this point. I mentioned there's a time to advance and a time to retreat. And he said, "Yeah, but retreating means giving up. Retreating means, being defeated." And it got me for a second. And I had to stop and think about that, and I said, "Well, here's the problem. If you are retreating because you're defeated, or you are retreating to give up, you missed the proper time to retreat. You missed it because the proper time to retreat was when you could have retreated and reestablished and come back. So probably your ego or your desire to move forward or your desire to keep going or that kind of Western Marlboro man, I can do it, that kind of grabbed a hold of you and you didn't recognize when the time came for you to hold back and reorder so that you would be able to return, to fall back so that you can fight again another day. So it's never the flow. I mean, the flow is just the flow.
And you just
It's
got to
being
work with
able
it.
to recognize it and align with it. And what you make of it. There's from meditation. We know this, that life is painful and it's freaking hard to be a human being. It just is. I mean, it is.
It's designed that way.
It's hard and it's painful. There's heartbreak, there's physical pain, there's legs that break, there's expectations that are dashed, jobs that aren't given, interviews, I mean, it's just painful. So it's not the pain that happens in life, it's what we do with it. It's the how we respond to it and what the thinking is. And also kind of what our very complicated internal landscape is. Because one time I was 310 pounds, right? And morbidly obese,
Wow.
morbidly obese. And every once in a while, somebody would run into me and say, "Hey, Bob, you look like you're losing weight." Now, that did not map on at all with my self-perception of who I was. So the immediate thought that I would have would be, this guy's blowing smoke up my nose, right? He wants something from
Right.
me. He's flattering me, something like that. Then when I actually did lose weight, and I was down here and somebody says to me now, hey, Bob, you're looking younger than I've ever seen you. Or, hey, Bob, you're looking really healthy. It maps on because it's consistent with, how I see myself.
Oh, it's a self-perception.
Right. Now, if you move into this area that so many of us have, that I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not thin enough, my hair's not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not funny, I'm not social, I'm an introvert, I'm this, I'm that, then all of life is going to map onto that self-perception, so that you had this kind of confirmation bias where if I'm not lovable and somebody treats me in a way that says they don't love me, I'll accept that as truthful.
Right.
If they act lovingly towards me, I'll be suspicious of it and reject it. So slowly I continue to confirm my own self-perception, and I build up this kind of wall of understanding that I continue to reinforce. And in meditation, all that we do is we kind of watch all of that happening. We don't try to run from it. We learn how to watch our thoughts. Yeah, everybody thinks it's about quieting your thoughts.
Right.
And that may happen, but it's a side effect. People think it's about being able to focus and concentrate, and that may happen, but it's a side effect. What the real purpose of meditation is to learn how to step out of your thoughts and watch them kind of flow through the consciousness of your mind. And it's
Becomes more like an awareness. You're stepping out of your persona and becoming the observer.
Absolutely. And the funny part about it is people say, oh, I can't do that. I'd never do that. I can't sit still, blah, blah. I've never found anybody that's actually practiced for 10 minutes a day for a week that says that anymore. I mean, in 1 week, but we all do it. I'm sure that you have been in conversations with other people, and even while you're speaking, there's another part of your brain that's commenting on your conversation.
Yep.
Or you're telling a joke and there's a part of your brain that's saying, oh, I don't think they're going to get this. Or, oh, they're really listening. They're going to think this. And so there's this other kind of commentator on the conversation that you're in.
Yep.
Well, that commentator is meditation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do in meditation. So you do it. The only difference is that when we meditate, we pay attention to the commentator on purpose, and we start to get reacquainted with that part of the thinking, because normally in our everyday stuff, in our default thinking, it just happens.
Right.
And it's like we don't have any connection to it. In meditation, all we do is listen to that part a little bit more to the other part. And over time, we start to really get to know that commentator. And if you're spiritual, and I believe this to be true, I believe that that is really your soul covered up by your conditioning.
Yeah. And
So,
that actually sounds very much like the phrase of be aware of being aware. So it's actually the third level out. You've got the conscious where you're interacting with the other person. You've got the commentator that may be the observer, but then you've got the third layer where you're observing the observer watching the actor.
yes, you're right. There could even be. So a lot of times when we talk about judgment, when I'm teaching people about how to become less judgmental, I say, well, you'll pay attention to your breath, then your mind is going to wander, and then at some point, your mind's going to say, psst, hey, you're not paying attention to your breath. And then there's a flood of judgments, and then eventually they go away, and then you go back and pay attention to your breath again. Then your mind wanders again, and you repeat this over and over and over. But when we talk about being a little bit more judgmental, when you notice the judgment, we say, is it possible then to not judge yourself for judging? Is that possible? And for some people, they'll see the judgment and then they'll start judging themselves for judging.
Right.
So if they're doing that, then we go to that third place and we say, is it possible to not judge yourself for judging your judging?
Right. Which the farther out you get, the more it seems it's like complex. It's like, who am I talking to now?
But at some point, you can not judge the judging of your judging that's judging your judging. You can get to that, how many levels out? But when you get there, you can feel what it feels like to not be judgmental about your judging. And that gives you the skill to not judge.
Right.
And why is that important? So I figure my mind works pretty much like your mind. And we have this thing called projection. So if I think a certain way, I figure you think that way, because I figure your mind works kind of like mine. Our databases are different and our experiences are different. But still, I wouldn't be able to have a conversation with you if our minds didn't work pretty much alike.
Right. We're human.
Right. We're human. So the more I judge, the more I am positive that you're judging. And that means you're judging me. So the more I judge, the more I feel judged.
Okay.
And feeling judged is not a happy feeling.
No.
So by reducing my own judging, I free myself up from the sensation that I'm being judged by everyone.
Judge, right. That kind of almost goes to the concept of what was it? Jesus is saying that says, "Judge not, that ye be not judged."
Judged, yeah. And everybody thinks that's God's job. And when you get to the golden gates, that's when the judgment comes. But I see that this way: judge not, so that you don't feel like you're being judged. And that's one of the steps to leading a happier life. You know, as long as I'm holding up a shield because I don't want you to know the real me, which really isn't the real me.
Right.
It's the me that was formed by a lot of things that happened when I was too young to put them into context.
It's the ego projection.
Right, exactly. So I hold up a shield to protect myself from you learning who I really am. And I think that if I drop the shield, then I'm going to be vulnerable and hurt. And the discovery is that when you do drop the shield, you become invulnerable. Because I am what I am, and I is what I is, and I'm Popeye the Sailor Man.
Or you could even go farther and say, "I am what I am." Well, who, or what said that before? Many.
I am, right.
I am what I am, or I am that I am, or whatever it
I
was.
am that I am, right.
And in fact, we all are,
In fact, we all are.
because we are nothing but a creation of the Creator. So, hence, you could go down the rabbit hole on that one too.
Yeah.
Well, as a teacher of meditation, maybe we can go back to the basics. Since there are so many people who are saying, "Oh, well, like you said, I can't sit still, or my mind's always racing, or I've tried that and I can't stick with it for more than a couple of days or a week." Maybe let's step back and go right back to the beginning and say to those people who are frustrated with the practice and can't seem to move beyond that certain stage, what's a good way for them to begin their meditation so that they can start to not only experience it, but get over all those common hurdles that so many people seem to encounter?
Well, I'm really fortunate that I came along to this, in the time that I did. When a group of folks approached me and they said they wanted me to take the teacher training, I did, and it was 2 years, and it was real intense. And then I tried to go out and teach meditation in the Vipassana style. It just doesn't map onto the Western mind. You can't say to people, "Yeah, come and sit with me for an hour every week, and you'll reach nirvana or something." It doesn't work.
Right.
But when I got to Elon, after I stopped, retired from trial practice, they asked me to come teach there, and I was teaching law. But there's a spiritual center on campus, and so I gravitated over there. And when they found out that I was a meditation teacher, they immediately said, "Oh, so you must know Koru." And I go, "What's Koru?" They go, "It's what they developed at Duke University." So it turns out that at Duke University, they got their counseling department and their medical department and their research department, their psychology department, their sociology department, their MSW program. They all collaborated with the question, what can we do to create a program that works for the Western mind so that these very stressed out Duke students have some way of getting through the the program?
Oh, wow.
And they worked on it for years, and they finally found out. First, they found out what didn't work, and the typical ways of teaching meditation they found statistically don't work very well. Apps don't work very well because people generally buy them, and then there's no accountability to a teacher, and they tend to lose motivation, and then the app sits in their phone. If they go to get and hire a guru or a coach, if they can afford it, it can be very helpful. But the financial burden tends to wear on people, so they can't meet too often, and you can't make progress slowly in this area. It may be that so just like, if you're going to a gym and you're investing the time in the gym and you go once a month, you're going to progress very slowly.
If at all.
And then, eventually you say, why am I doing this?
Right.
So what can we do? How can we do something? So they came up with a digital infrastructure that includes daily coaching from a live coach, from a certified teacher, daily coaching from a certified teacher together with all the information you need on an app. And the teacher has a dashboard, and the app has a logging function. So every time the student practices 10 minutes a day, every time they practice, they write a little log. The log goes to the teacher's dashboard. Every morning, the teacher gets up, reads the log, and responds to it with coaching. Let me put it in perspective of a yoga teacher. If a yoga teacher had an app like this, the student would, say, take a video of their practice. It would go to the yoga teacher's dashboard. She would watch it, and then she would send back something like, "It's all great, but you need to widen your stance about 4 inches and lift your elbow. That'll help."
Yeah.
That kind of little adjustment coaching every single day, they found keeps the motivation really high, and you can do in 5 weeks, meeting just 1 hour a week and 10 minutes of practice a day, you can get the same progress that most folks get in a year.
Wow.
And so I went to Duke and I said, teach me the program. And so I got certified there. And so that's how I teach meditation. So that's just, generally
Right.
How you do it. Now, in that course, it's my job to look at the logs and to read into the logs, what's going on with this person. So if they're telling me I'm doing breath awareness, which is the meditation that most people say I can't sit still for, it's bringing your attention to your breath. And so you say, well, why don't you try walking meditation?
Oh, yeah.
And then why don't you try Gatha, where you repeat a series of phrases over and over, not a mantra, but a series of phrases. And then you teach them a little brain science and why they're doing what they're doing and how it's affecting their brain. Because you can actually change the physical structure of your brain with your mind.
Mm-hmm. Almost sounds like neuroplasticity.
That's exactly what it is,
Okay.
Neuroplasticity. They took pictures of the hippocampus of people who were going to ask for taxi cab licenses in London.
Oh.
You've heard of this?
I've heard of this. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. So they studied the maps of London for weeks. Then they took a picture of the hippocampus, and it had actually grown longer, wider, taller, and thicker. So you actually changed the brain.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? You
That's
absolutely
right.
can.
You absolutely can. You absolutely can. Another thing that I would say to answer that question, even outside of meditation, is this is one of my little stock phrases. We have a responsibility to beauty. And the ancients knew this, and brain science confirms it. He goes, we've all heard of the stress response, fight, flight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's housed in the right prefrontal cortex, the right forehead, the part of the brain that's right here on the right-hand
Yep.
side.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that's housed. And we all heard of the rest and digest, the relaxation response. That's over on the left side of the brain, prefrontal cortex. And if the right side is highly activated and there's a lot of electrical activity there, with great uncanny prediction accuracy, you can say this person is going to be critical, pessimistic, see the glass is half full, da 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 da, et cetera, et cetera. If there's more electrical activity on the left-hand side, you can predict them to be optimistic, see the glass is half full, be supportive, feel connected, feel even spiritual, connected to a greater power, have those more lofty purposes in life. And just like yin and yang, the goal is balance. And the problem is that the world doesn't send us a lot of beauty. It sends us a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
It sends us a lot of politics. It sends us a lot of distressing news and reports on a lot of suffering. So we're activated. We're constantly being activated on the right, which even without that, it is the stronger half of the brain because it's where our survival instincts are housed. So we have to survive first among all things. So that part of the brain is even stronger. So if you don't want to go down the rabbit hole, you have to intentionally bring beauty into your life. You have to, take the time to walk in the forest. You have to take the time in the morning to go out and watch a sunrise and make that a habit of your life. And if you do that, it will get into your pores. And if you think you're broken, just remember what Leonard Cohen said. It's the cracks is how the light gets in.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. And that almost sounds like a practice of gratitude, the practice of being grateful for the tiny things in our life that we completely overlook. It's like if you just sit and whether you think about it or you write about it, just like, I'm grateful for that hot cup of coffee. I'm grateful for that beautiful sunrise. I'm grateful for the clothes on my back. I mean, things that we just take for granted, and you start thinking about and visualizing happiness, visualizing being grateful for these little things. It just suddenly starts to flow. You suddenly start to feel better because you're suddenly thinking about it. You're feeling it. You're embracing it as opposed to embracing the opposite.
Yes, absolutely. You're building neural pathways. And another little metaphor, you know how a light bulb has a very thin filament, right? The old light bulbs.
Yep, the old light bulbs.
And the reason that they get hot and glow is because you've got this wire cable, copper wire cable, carrying all of this electricity, and all of a sudden it hits this tiny little, very thin filament, and there's a lot of resistance. And the resistance, just like friction, causes heat, and it glows and it gets hot. If you have a big wide river and it narrows down to a tiny little part, you get white water. You get all this agitation, and the like. In your brain, when you have a new thought, you know about neuroplasticity. So neurons that fire together, they wire together and they form a little pathway. Now, when that pathway is thin, it resists the flow of electricity.
Interesting.
And what that feels like subjectively is, oh, I'm not good at math. It feels like I don't like to do crossword puzzles. Or that's just hard to think about.
The resistance.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Now, as you have that same thought over and over and over again, each time that neural pathway is getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And so physically, I mean, as a mere question of the physics of the electrical flow, it flows more easily. And what that feels like subjectively is, oh, I like to do crossword puzzles. Yeah, let me try that. Oh, I'm good at that. That's what it feels like. So even though meditation may be a little bit uncomfortable to begin with, it's the repetition eventually that you get, and it gets better.
And that's the basis of a habit, really.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing, I guess, that meditation teaches us is there's discomfort, okay? And, if you put that like on a level, like here is noticeable, and here is annoying, and here is distressing, and here is overwhelming, okay? Now, here is your tolerance for discomfort. So if your tolerance for discomfort is down here, you cycle through these things pretty quickly. But if your tolerance for discomfort has grown, like your tolerance has grown, then you can go through all these levels and they don't bother you.
Right.
Right? So there's two parts of it. One is trying to suppress the discomfort. But life has discomfort into it. You can't really suppress it. So the only option that you really have is to increase your tolerance to discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And even when people say, well, it's uncomfortable for me to try to sit there, I say, well, take it in little pieces. You don't have to start 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Do it for 30 seconds. But you start to find, oh, I can do it for 30 seconds.
Right.
Oh, I can do it for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can do it for a minute and a half.
Yes.
And you're beginning to strengthen your brain and develop a tolerance for discomfort, which begins to allow you to tolerate not getting the job. It allows you, because you've gotten the skill of tolerating discomfort. And there's really no difference between the discomfort of sitting still and not liking it and not getting the job, just, in degree.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like, one of the things I'm always teaching my students is that it's always the consistency, not the duration, because the duration, you're going to start out and it's going to suck. It's going to be painful. You're not going to want to do it, and you're just going to give up in the practice. So if you start at maybe 30 seconds or a minute, say, okay, I've done it. And then you start to feel, okay, yeah, that actually felt happy. I felt good. Okay, I did that. So now you get the sense of experiencing the positivity, but you get the sense of accomplishment, achievement. You're like, okay, I'll do that.
Exactly. Yes.
And that itself is a reinforcing habit, a neuroplastic expansion to the point where you start to say, okay, well, I can do a minute, I can do 2 minutes, I can do 3 minutes. And then they start to then go to the next step of, I actually enjoy the feeling and I look forward to it. So now it becomes a habit upon a habit that you actually want to do. And that's when, you've gone past all these preconceived notions of, I can't do it because, well, guess what? I already did it and now I like it. So I'm going to keep on doing it. So that's where you're just like, it's like go to the gym. You got to keep on working out the muscles. Let's say you go to the gym and, you do 2 reps and you call it a day, then 3 reps and you do the day, 4 reps and just keep on going and going and going. Next thing you know, you're doing 20 reps and you're doing it every other day. And you're like, oh, okay, I can do that. That's easy.
So I started going to the gym with the gym buddy. I started going consistently. And one day I kind of walk into the bathroom and I got my T-shirt on. I lift up my shoulder and I'm looking at my bicep there. I'm moving my pecs, and my wife is in the back. She cracks up laughing.
Oh no, look at Bob. He's like turning into the Hulk.
She starts mocking me. She starts walking around like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
I'm going to pump you up, raw.
But how many times do you hear joggers say, if I don't jog, my day sucks?
Yeah. They've gotten into that place. I mean, it's like, for them, it's the endorphins too. I mean, it's that's the other thing.
So in meditation, most people think that I'm not supposed to let my mind wander. I'm supposed to keep my attention on the candle or on my breath.
Right.
But it's completely different. You say that you're going to put your attention on your breath, but your mind will go nuts,
Yeah.
and it will go off thinking about whether you left the stove on or what you're going to have for dinner, what you said to that guy yesterday. It's going to do all that. The healing in meditation is not in keeping your attention on your breath. That's not where the training comes in. It comes in noticing that your mind has wandered and then having the courage to simply return and begin again.
Come back to the breath or the
And
center.
begin again.
Yeah.
Get back up on the saddle.
Yep.
Because just like you said, when you go to the gym and you do that and you have that consistency, you start to feel I can do that.
Yeah.
In your brain, when you begin again, you're doing the same thing and you get to do it 10, 12, or 15 times in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
10 or 15 times in 10 minutes, you get to tell yourself, I am strong enough, or you get to create a neural pathway that tells you. And what you're building is you are specifically training self-efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
And you're developing that. So it is a specific exercise, particularly to build up that sense of I can do it.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like a lot of times I'll teach students. It's like your mind is going to wander. You are going to have thoughts. If you didn't have thoughts, you'd be 6 feet under already, and that'd be a different issue. But you are going to have thoughts. You're a sentient being, so acknowledge the thought. Imagine it's like a subway train coming into the station. Just don't get on the subway. Just don't get on the train. Let the doors close and move on. Just say acknowledge it and goodbye, and then come back, and you're done.
Right. Exactly.
And that's how people can kind of get over the oh, did I pay that bill? Oh, forget it. And then just let it go, acknowledge it, and come back to whatever it is you're focusing on. The breath, the visualization, the whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's nothing that, and even, I mentioned to you before we started that I'm taking a refresher course in trauma sensitive meditation teaching. And even with folks, that have suffered some serious trauma in their life, if you have, meditation has done some harm, and you can be over sometimes, concentrating on your breath or a part of your body, or even, paying attention to your thinking can be very evocative of past traumas. But, but a trauma sensitive teacher is going to notice that and give some modifications so that you can maybe drop back from the 5-pound weight to the 2-pound weight, or reduce the time, or and slowly come back. We have something called pendulation, where you pay attention to something that's enjoyable, like your teddy bear or the flowers, and then you move to give attention to the thing that's uncomfortable, just, for a moment, brief moment, and then go back. And it's kind of like exposure therapy. And so there's that, for people that are ADHD, they say, oh, I can't do it because my ADHD. I've had lots of students that had ADHD and didn't have any problem with meditation once they understand, the basic instructions.
And what's going on? Yeah. Exactly. Well, this is fabulous, Bob. If you were to talk to one listener about either centering or Taoism or meditation or getting back to whatever it is that is focused, what piece of advice do you think you'd give that one listener?
That you're not your thoughts. That you are so much more than your thoughts. The person that you identify with your thoughts is really, and I don't mean this in any kind of critical or small way, but it's small compared to the possibilities and potential of who you really are.
Yeah.
And at least accept that there is a possibility that you can step out of your thoughts and reacquaint yourself with your really authentic self and what the possibilities of who you are.
Yeah. Beautifully said. It's like,
And get a dog.
and get a dog. I love it. Because the dog is unconditionally loving in the physical.
Unconditionally loving.
There you go. Best friend. Absolutely.
It's like, somebody once said to me, take your best friend and your dog and stick them in the trunk of your car and then drive around for 5 miles. And when you open it, see which one kisses you.
That's great. I love that. The dog will say like, I'm here. Let's play. That's great. That's perfect. Oh, beautiful. Well, Bob, thank you so much. This is absolutely wonderful. How can people learn more about you?
Well, I have a website, and I'm about to launch a podcast, and I have a blog on Substack, and they're all under the same name, awiseandhappylife.com. You can just go to the website, and you can find my blogs there. But more importantly, there's a lot of freebies there. There are a couple of ebooks that I put together about what meditation is, what it's not. I put one together, 25 tips on how to relax, and some quizzes about, are you self-compassionate? How aware are you of meditation? So there's a lot of freebies on the website that, are free. And of course, if you're interested in the course, the information is there. And any of your listeners are more than free to send me an email at bob@awiseandhappylife.com.
Very good. Well, let's make sure that we're all wise and happy, shall we? Great. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you, and I appreciate you.
Oh, great. Thanks. And everybody, we appreciate you, and thank you so much for listening to the show. Another episode again, and be sure to like and subscribe to the show. That way you'll always get every episode in your feed every Wednesday. And if you're looking for more than just go to Montclair Medium /soul-growth, and you'll see all this and more. So we'll see you in the next episode. And this is Chris signing off. Love and light. See you until then. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spirits Beside Us. Make sure you head over to the show notes for all the links and information on this week's episode. You can check it out at spiritsbesideus.com. If you love this episode as much as I did, head over to rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're looking for a community of spiritual seekers like yourself, make sure you join my Facebook page, Spirits Beside Us Podcast on Facebook. This is Chris signing off, sending you love and light. I can't wait to connect with you again on Wednesday.